Well, welcome everyone officially to our series, our Doghouse Talk series kickoff. We're very excited to be kicking off with Datadog tagging 101 and strategy and compliance. We all know that tagging is definitely one of the basics of every start of a build, but it's definitely one of the most essential parts to get right. So let's talk a little bit about who's speaking. I'm going to give Jesse and Logan a chance to introduce themselves. Jesse, if you want to go first.
Yeah, hey everyone. Thanks for taking some time this afternoon to join us. My name's Jesse, one of the enterprise account executives here. I've been working in the Datadog space for a little over 6 years now. So I've seen a lot of customers ranging from, the smaller blockchain type startups all the way up to Fortune 100 companies. And I've seen how they've implemented Datadog and taken part in that from the RapDev side as well. So, seen a bunch of different approaches and pitfalls, I should say. This talk is really kind of going back to a blog that I put together talking about some of those pitfalls and kind of common strategies that RapDev is using to address them.
Logan? Yeah. Logan.
Hey guys, my name is Logan. I'm one of the tech leads on our Datadog side of the house here at RapDev. I've been with RapDev coming up on 3 years now. And like Jesse, I've seen, and worked with customers from very, very small to very, very large and helped spearhead some of their implementations. And obviously a big part of that is tagging and making sure you have a good tagging strategy, which we'll be touching on today.
Yeah, and we also have Anthony here. He's our head of sales. He'll be most in our moderator in the chat to field any questions and get them ready for our Q&A at the end. But yeah, let's get started. We're going to talk a little bit about who RapDev is. Some of you may know us, some of you may not. For those who do and don't, we are a US-based team of DevOps engineers and SREs. That's truly what makes us really unique as an organization. We don't outsource any of our work to outside countries. So it's all US-based. Some of us are here in Boston. Some of us are remote across the country. We've done about 55 or more Datadog rollouts just in 2021 alone, which is really impressive. And we have about 23 Datadog marketplace integrations. I think that number keeps growing every week, essentially, but at this point, we're about half of the marketplace, if not more. And what we really specialize here at RapDev is the ongoing management of your Datadog, implementation and consulting, and also the marketplace integrations, which it brings us to our next point, which is our specialty. There's a reason why we're a Datadog gold tier partner, We know how to leverage Datadog in both new and existing solutions to solve business problems. We really, really enjoy the most complex business problems available because that gives us a chance to really stretch our technical legs and be able to come up with creative and really innovative solutions here. And that if that means building and supporting custom Datadog integrations or, building out an entire new integration or finding a way to link a legacy platform to Datadog, that's really what we specialize is consolidating and making sure that everything is monitored through Datadog. That's really what we like. But yeah, so let's start breaking it down, right? Let's break down what we came to here. So I'm going to turn it over to Jesse to start that.
Yeah, and I know I see a few names on here that have worked with us before. So you might have a good idea of RapDev, but for those that haven't, really it comes back to accelerating your time to value with Datadog and making sure you're, working backwards from your end business goals and achieving that through monitoring and through Datadog monitoring. So of course, the subject today is really the tagging and tagging 101. To start though, let's talk about some of the common pitfalls that we see. So, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Datadog has this concept of reserved tagging. So essentially, they're tags that are required to, make certain parts of the application to perform properly, be it APM to correlate to logs and metrics or the host map correlating, or infrastructure lists correlating properly. So we've seen before some people misuse reserve tagging and maybe override what should be reserve tags. And that is one of the common pitfalls. This is probably the most common pitfall, but it's really inconsistency across teams and technologies. So not having a succinct strategy that spans various technologies, various environments, whether on-prem, in the cloud, or if it's just team to team. And with that, right, it's much more difficult to scale your usage of Datadog effectively, because teams are somewhat competing with each other and everyone has a different concept in terms of what a tag should mean. And leading into that, and this sometimes is the cause of the inconsistency, but manual configuration of tags, which could cause missing tags, and also just cause a lack of overall tagging, because if you're doing it manually, it's much more difficult to maintain at scale. SAT word for the day, tag. I'm going to butcher it, but tag concatenation. So we've actually worked with some companies that instead of breaking these out into multiple tags, they might be a little fearful of having too many tags, which, obviously you don't want to have a list that's impossible to maintain. But there's many times where you definitely want to separate these tags, and you don't want to have multiple variables associated with one key. When in doubt, you can break those out so you can make better use of the data, which kind of leads into the underutilization of tags. So, if you're not tagging based on all the different situations or ways that you want to manipulate the data, and then you kind of go back and think about it afterwards, sometimes you won't get the type of monitoring that you want out of the tool, or the type of visualizations you want out of the tool. And effectively, it's going to hinder your ability to scale the usage and the adoption. And then finally, redundant tags. So this would be where over tagging might be an issue, where you have multiple tags that really mean the same thing. And because of that, two teams or two people might be visualizing on data in a different way, which just makes it more difficult to kind of onboard people and create a succinct approach from an observability perspective. Go to the next slide there. So that brings us to the RapDev approach. And this is just three kind of simple areas that we like to focus on in a lot of our professional services engagements, as well as some of the kind of software or the code that we've put together to help you manage tags at scale. So the first thing is all of our engagements from a discovery and a tagging strategy perspective, that's core to everything we do. We want to better understand the engineering and technical context that you're going to require, but also the business context that you should require. So we really need to develop a centralized and accessible tagging strategy document that also is built into an earlier stage of your deployment pipelines. So if you can do it at the build process, for example, or with agent configuration, you want to automate the addition of those tags earlier on into your process. You want to reduce the total sources of tags as best you can. So whether or not you're using like a ServiceNow CMDB to help populate your tags, or you're using like native functionality with Kubernetes labels or cloud native tags, you really want to reduce the total source of where you're pulling your tags from to make it easier for you to manage at scale. And then from a config management perspective, you want to have a centralized inventory that you can work off of. And then ultimately, once you have a good succinct tagging strategy that's accessible and centralized, you're going to want to start monitoring your tags with Datadog. So we always say it's monitoring Datadog with Datadog. Effectively, it's visualizing on what systems are in and out of compliance with that strategy you have in place, so you can more proactively make updates and reach out or update the individual systems with the proper tags that you require. Go to the next slide.
Yeah, so like Jesse mentioned, a big part of having a good tagging strategy is knowing what tags you shouldn't use is usually a pretty good place to start. And so maybe some of you are or are not aware, Datadog does have some reserved tags that while you could throw it into a configuration file and what have you and let it go off, you should really try to stay away from utilizing these because of their importance to the platform and different products within the platform. Host is a pretty common one. Everyone sees it as if there's an agent installed or you're bringing your systems in through a cloud integration. You've seen this tag before. You definitely don't want to override this unless it's using a native Datadog configuration parameter. Device is another pretty common one for correlating, metrics, traces, processes, and then logs by device or disk. And then source, service, env, and version. These are pretty common ones. A lot of folks, if you're using logging or APM, you know that these are ones that you have to set within the specific configuration for logs or APM, but you definitely would not want to set these at the host level, or you could cause some duplication on some of the metrics and logs and whatnot that your systems are submitting. And that can just be a really big headache when it comes to either monitoring or trying to visualize certain data on your dashboards. Another key part of tagging is having good technical context. So, utilizing the correct tags to allow technical folks to know exactly, what they're monitoring and how they're aggregating or splitting data up. Some ones that we commonly see here at RapDev are location or region. If you're using one of the cloud integrations, AWS, Azure, GCP, you've seen region kind of scattered all over the place. That's usually a pretty good one to utilize, especially in your on-premise deployments, just to have consistency across a hybrid cloud environment. Application, it's a good thing to know what apps are running where. It's a good tag. Component, whether it's a web server, an app server, a database, that can really help so that you can split out certain dashboards and certain folks that maintain those specific components can see the data that they need without going through a big mess and determining, by individual operating system. And then OS, while this is metadata that's attached to the agent itself, it can be a good tag as well to split out if you have maybe operating system specific dashboards. And then another one could be language. So if your system is hosting an application, a single application that's written in a specific language, maybe you want to be able to splice data in certain ways by that tag as well. And then
Bella, can you go back real quick? And that brings us to the business context tags. So it's really important to be able to derive your metrics and dashboards back to the end, business context. And then also from a management perspective, managing your Datadog account, being able to bill back, your usage, whether it's host usage or APM usage, even log usage, by having tags like a bill back unit applied at the agent level, it's going to help you start to slice and dice your billing metric data much easier. So, you can drive self-service adoption, but that is still in control and put back to those individual teams and how they're using it. Additionally, though, it's going to help you with routing alerts, for example, making sure the right people are getting woken up, given their ownership of a given system or application, but also help pool the knowledge across your organization in terms of who owns what and how these applications interact with each other. So from a business context perspective, we put a few out there. There's always many more that are much more kind of niche to every individual use case. So don't definitely lean on us in the Q&A section if you have more pointed questions around certain use cases there.
Yeah, so and then Jesse touched on this a little bit previously, but being able to apply your tags consistently is obviously extremely important. If you have folks going in and doing a lot of this manually, It can lead to, typos, mistakes, duplication of tags, especially if you're maintaining the tags in two different places. So leveraging a configuration management tool, an Ansible, a Chef, a Puppet, and being able to maintain your tags as code in certain variables can be extremely beneficial. And it can not only help with consistency, but also, automating rollouts obviously brings a lot of value in being able to tag quickly. And then you can also, use certain modules on some of those configuration management tools to even pull from a CMDB that might be your single source of truth. Where possible, you want to leverage natively collected or autonomous collection of tags. So a lot of Datadog's integrations for hosts such as Kubernetes, vSphere, or AWS, Azure, or GCP, they bring a lot of those tags in natively. So utilizing what's already there and then expanding upon it can provide a lot of value. And then the third point would be incorporating tagging into your build request process. So whether you initiate that through a form in ServiceNow or even, any sort of manual kickoff of automation of some sort, being able to incorporate that in the build process itself and not having to worry about go back and manually add tags at a certain whim makes for a lot more consistent and a lot faster when it comes to rolling out your tags.
Yeah. Some examples of what we've seen in terms of incorporating that earlier in your build process would be like a web form built out on ServiceNow, where if someone's putting in a request for a VM to be built, there's a few different, recommended or required tags that they need to kind of fill in their answers for. One of those might be billback. Others might be just the team owner's name or like the application name, stuff like that. So that's one methodology. The other, as Logan was mentioning, is a self-service like infrastructure as code, and it's requiring requiring some level of variables to be input at that infrastructure as code level. So anytime new cloud resources are being built, they're tagged properly on the cloud side, and then that's obviously pulling through to Datadog. But it always depends on company to company in terms of how you incorporate it into your process, but it's really important to get that earlier on versus as an afterthought.
Cool. That leads us to how you monitor those tags. Once you have them organized and labeled, how do you monitor those tags, Logan?
Yeah, so I will go ahead and share my screen. We have here at RapDev, we developed an integration that we refer to as the tag validator. So essentially what it is doing is you define in a YAML file, same as any other Datadog integration, a list of tag keys that you want to make sure that your hosts have, and then allowed values for those tag keys. So you can either outline specific values that you want to make sure that all your hosts have, or you can just say make sure that it has any value and use an asterisk to denote that. We've got two dashboards that ship out of the box. The first one being the host validator dashboard. So this is for any system that is either coming in through a cloud integration or is hosting a Datadog agent on it. And so what we're doing is we're hitting Datadog's host API, extracting all of the tags that are assigned to those systems at the host level, and then checking them against the ones defined in the YAML file that I outlined previously. And then we're submitting that back as metrics to Datadog. So this first section here is looking at the tag keys themselves.
Logan, you need to take control of your screen.
Pardon?
You're sharing. You're not sharing your screen.
It's sharing on mine.
All right, let me stop sharing. Oh, there it is.
There it goes.
Okay. All right, sorry, technical difficulty. So circling back, so this first section is looking at tag keys themselves. So essentially what it's doing is it's saying, hey, do the hosts that I'm looking at have the specific tag key that I've outlined as something that's mandatory? And then when it submits it back as metrics, it outlines what host is missing what tag key. And then we've got it shaded red here to say, hey, this is a bad thing. This system's missing a tag that I've deemed as mandatory. Let's maybe fix that. And obviously you can set up monitors for all of these metrics as well. This second section is now looking at the tag values. So essentially what it's saying, okay, the system has a tag key. Does it have a value that I've deemed appropriate? And so that's kind of what this section is here. So all these systems here are obviously missing an appropriate value for the tag key of ENV. So we want to go through and make sure that the values that these systems have are those that align with our previously defined tagging strategy. And then lastly on this is we have an agent inventory. So it's obviously really important for collecting certain metrics that you have agents installed on your system. Even if you're bringing in through a cloud integration, you should definitely throw a Datadog agent on those systems as well. You get more up-to-date metrics. You can use all of the 500 plus integrations that Datadog has out of the box. And so here it outlines what system has an agent and what version that agent is on. The other piece to this, and I won't spend as much time on this because it's essentially the same thing, but we also check your synthetic tests for tag keys and tag values. Synthetics, especially in the e-commerce world, for testing various portions of your website are obviously extremely important. And so tagging the tests appropriately can be, absolutely crucial, especially when it comes to, firing off alerts, making sure that the correct teams get the alerts for the tests that they own, things like that. So we kind of have the exact same thing going on here, checking for the tag keys to exist, as well as the tag values. And here, all the ones that have the tag keys have all good values. So this is great.
I'm gonna share my screen again real quick. Cool. So we are coming up at our Q&A session. So I believe we have a couple questions. If Jesse, you want to talk us through the question?
Yeah, one of the questions from the audience was, can tags be synced with an external CMDB like ServiceNow? And do most customers use Datadog as a source of truth for those tags? So I can take a stab at that, and maybe Logan, you can expand upon it as well. But the simple answer is yes. Tags can be synced back to an external CMDB like ServiceNow. In fact, a lot of our customers are using Datadog as a source to kind of enrich their data in ServiceNow. And especially in like cloud ephemeral and containerized workloads, Docker's or Datadog's a really good source of truth for that data because it's so real time that you need to kind of continually maintain and update your CMDB. And so using Datadog to ServiceNow to keep that up to date is a really good mentality there. On the other side, though, we do see some customers that have a very clean CMDB, let's say, and we leverage that inventory to actually deploy and apply tags to Datadog. So the CMDB helps us generate, let's say, an Ansible inventory with the proper tags associated with each of the items. We leverage that to help us manage the deployments. And that would be maybe more of a static environment versus a really ephemeral, like containerized or cloud environment where the tags are typically applied at the cloud or agent level.
And just to kind of expand upon what Jesse said there, alternatively, yes, you can use the tags from Datadog to enrich your CMDB. Alternatively, you can use the CMDB as the source of truth for those tags when you go to tag your systems. I know that there's modules for things like Ansible to be able to pull certain data out of your ServiceNow CMDB, for example, and be able to use kind of like a dynamic inventory and a real-time source of those tags. So that's a possibility as well.
Cool. I hope that answered your question, but we have another one. How do you handle tags like service for sources that don't naturally include it, like Google Pub, /sub, and cloud functions?
So for some of those, if you're using for cloud functions, if you're tracing certain applications with APM, you should be able to use, the tag service to be able to tag those. As for the pub sub question, I'm assuming you're referring explicitly to logs. You might be able to do some workarounds with remapping within Datadog. So using log pipelines, you can remap certain attributes of the logs, maybe your application or service names somewhere in the log already, but maybe it doesn't show up as like one of the native Datadog tags. So that could be a possibility for that as well.
For sure. And I think we have one more. Please feel free to keep asking, guys.
Just Izzy, real quick before
yeah.
we move on to the next one, just a follow-up to the last question that we answered. What about APM instead of logs, Logan?
APM, are you referring to the pub sub model? Drew? I'll wait for him to type here.
Yeah. We can go to the next question and circle back to Drew.
Gotcha. So next question, can you expand a little bit more on best practices for unified service tagging where you see customers using it? A lot of our customers, utilizing unified service tagging, for those that don't know, it's tying different pieces of Datadog telemetry together using those 3 reserved tags that we went over before, which is env, service, and version. This allows you to do profiling within APM, being able to do deployment tracking across different versions of services. And that's kind of where I see customers using it the most, especially, in a world where a specific customer could be doing deployments to production, dozens, if not tens of hundreds times a day. Being able to track even the smallest changes as you're rolling out different versions of your microservice or full-blown application can obviously be extremely valuable because, if one small change brings extremely high latency or lots of errors, being able to track the exact version, whether that's maybe a release or a git commit hash, being able to resolve those problems for the end user extremely quickly, obviously provides a lot of value and can help save you some money in the long run.
Cool. Seems that we have a little follow-up from Drew. Drew saying that they have a lot of logging in their APM, but not so much they have a lot of tagging in their APM, sorry, but not so much in their logging. And they're trying to coordinate what is happening in pub sub with what's happening in APM, since they live mostly in APM.
Gotcha. So if you're writing your logs from your microservice to Google Cloud and then sending those over with the pub sub model into Datadog, you should be able to, it might require some manual instrumentation of APM, depending on different frameworks and languages, but you should be able to still inject your trace and span IDs into those logs, and they should correlate automatically within Datadog. If they don't, there's some remapping that you might have to use in Datadog's log pipelines. I think there's either like a trace or a span remapper, or where you define exactly what property from those logs specifically is containing that trace or span ID, and then they should correlate that way.
Yeah, and I know out of the box from a pub sub perspective, and Drew, you're probably well aware of this, but there is the ability to add all the pub sub labels to automatically pull into Datadog as custom tags. So any custom pub sub labels would pull in as tags, but to override and use it to apply a service tag through that methodology probably wouldn't be the best practice. It would have to either be through like the manual or auto instrumentation on the APM side to correlate to that service tag.
And I think one last follow-up from Drew is the built-in, the built-in integration with Google PubSub, the product, not us using PubSub in general to post data.
And then another follow-up on that. If we had a way of affecting the built-in PubSub tagging the way we can with cube labels in APM. Yeah. So it is the custom labels on the Google side, which I think requires you have to enable like cloud asset inventory permissions for those labels to be used as tags.
Cool. Any more questions from the audience? We have a couple more minutes to feel free. All right. Well. Anything? Okay. Well, it's been a real pleasure being able to present this for you guys and kick off this series. It's going to be a monthly occurrence, so make sure to keep an eye out for our next wave of registrations for our next webinar. It's going to be in October around the same time, and make sure to keep an eye for our landing page. It's going to be updated with fun new content every now and then. We have blog posts and we have the upcoming registration for the following webinars. But yeah, it's been really great. Thank you to Jesse and Logan.
Also, for those on the call, we'd love to have more, I guess, in-depth conversations about your particular, questions. I'm sure people have more particular questions like Drew did for your environment. So happy to connect with you on a different call that's more personal and talk through kind of like your strategies there, and we can cater our answers a little better, obviously on a more private call. Yeah,
absolutely. As you guys can see, hopefully, Jesse's phone number is right there. Feel free to call him, email him. So is Anthony. Please email if you have any more tech related questions or are curious about how things work or how the tag validator works. Feel free to email the engineer team. They're usually pretty good about replying to things. Yeah, again, it's been really great. Thank you so much to everyone who joined, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.